3 weeks, she said. That's what your son told us when he enrolled you. The woman at the Mapleton Care home reception desk did not look up when she said it. She was straightening a stack of papers that did not need straightening, and that small, deliberate avoidance told me more than the words themselves did. I had asked when I could expect to go home. She had answered a different question entirely. 3 months before my son Miles brought me to that place, I was living a perfectly ordinary life in Halifax. Not a grand life, not the kind that required managing by anyone else, but entirely mine. In the same blue-gray clapboard house in the South End where my late husband Stuart and I had raised Miles over 30 years. The mortgage had been paid in full 11 years earlier. I drove myself to the Saturday farmers market. I had lunch with my neighbor Barb Schilling every other week at a diner on Quinpool Road that made the best chowder I had ever tasted. I served on the board of the local Friends of the Library Society, where I was generally considered the most useful and the most difficult person in the room. I had been a school librarian for 31 years. I managed my own finances. That mattered then, and it matters now. My Canada pension plan deposit arrived on the 3rd of every month. Stuart's survivor benefit arrived on the 8th. I balanced my checking account the way I had always balanced it, carefully, regularly, and alone. Numbers had never frightened me. Missing numbers had. Stuart Thornton had been an accountant for 37 years before he died 4 years ago. He was careful and methodical in the way that some people call boring, until that carefulness is the only thing standing between someone and a disaster they never saw coming. After he died, I kept his coffee mug on the second shelf beside mine. I kept the scratch on the hallway baseboard where he'd dragged a filing cabinet 20 years ago and refused to admit it. Small things. Mine to keep. My son Miles Thornton was 38 years old. He ran a landscaping and property maintenance company called Thornton Grounds and Properties, employed 12 people, and drove a truck with the company logo on both doors. He had a way of entering a room that suggested he had just come from somewhere important. His wife, Renee, was 36, worked in a real estate administrative office downtown, and was pleasant in the measured way of someone who had learned to reflect the person beside her. For most of my retired years, Miles called once or twice a week. He visited on holidays and perhaps once a month in between. That was normal. That was fine. I had never been the sort of mother who needed constant checking in to feel cared for. Then, in early spring, he started coming on Tuesdays, then Thursdays as well. He always arrived with 2 Tim Hortons coffees and a muffin he knew I preferred. He sat at my kitchen table and asked how I was managing. The word managing bothered me from the first time he used it, though I couldn't have said exactly why. "You still doing all your banking in person?" he asked one afternoon. "Some of it. There's really no reason to go into the branch anymore, Mum. They have everything on an app." "I know about the app. I prefer paper statements." He gave me the look people give when they believe you're being charming about your own obsolescence. "I could set everything up on automatic transfer for you. Pay your bills from your phone. I prefer to see what's leaving my account before it leaves." "You were a librarian, not a bookkeeper." "I was a librarian, which means I read everything twice." He laughed. He should have taken it as the warning it was. 2 weeks later, he began asking about money, not aggressively. Conversationally, the way someone asks about the weather before they ask about something else entirely. "Was my CPP depositing on the correct date? Was Stuart's survivor benefit still processing without any issues? Had I thought about what a new roof would cost relative to the current assessed value of the property?" I answered the pension questions. I did not answer the one about the property. Barb noticed before I said anything to her. "Your son has been over 4 times this month," she told me one evening on the phone. I noticed. "What does he want?" "He says he's planning ahead." Barb was quiet for a moment. "Whose future is he planning?" I did not have a good answer. The envelope fell from Miles's jacket pocket on a Saturday in April. He had come by with pastries from a bakery on Spring Garden Road. He stepped outside to take a phone call, leaving his jacket over the back of his chair. The envelope slipped from the inside pocket. I didn't touch it. But from across the table, I could see the red-bordered return address, the font of a creditor's overdue notice, and the amount visible through the folded flap. Past due, Thornton Grounds and Properties, $23,000. Miles came back inside and saw me looking at it. His expression changed completely. Supplier timing issue, he said, picking it up quickly. It'll clear. $23,000. Cash flow, normal in this industry. I looked at him. 31 years of cataloging what other people overlooked, and I could tell the difference between a man explaining something and a man rehearsing an explanation. Are you certain everything is all right? Completely, he said. He kissed my cheek when he left. I stood at the window and thought about what Stuart had once said, that a business owner who promises things will clear by end of month usually means the end of the following quarter. When Miles brought the power of attorney document the following week, I read it page by page. There were 5 pages numbered at the bottom. He had given me pages 1, 2, 3, and 5. Page 4 is missing, I said. Copying error. The lawyer said it's all standard language. Which lawyer? Someone Renee's office uses. I told him I would want my own solicitor to review it before I signed anything. The pleasantness left his face for exactly 2 seconds before he rebuilt it. I signed nothing that day. The dizziness came on a Thursday morning. I was reaching for the upper cabinet when the room tilted sideways for 20 seconds. I sat down on the kitchen floor, waited, and it passed. No fall, no confusion. 20 seconds. I phoned my doctor's office. They fit me in that afternoon. Miles called before I had finished dialing. Dr. Arsenault's office phoned me, he said. I frowned. Why would they? I'm still your emergency contact. This wasn't an emergency. He came over within the hour. He drove me to the appointment. In the car, his voice was careful and gentle. He said he had been thinking that I might benefit from a few weeks at a wellness center, just to get my blood pressure sorted, have people around. He had already found a place. I said no. That evening, he showed me the brochure. Maple Ridge Wellness and Recovery Center. Glossy photographs of sunny corridors, therapy rooms, walking paths along what looked like a Nova Scotia lake. It resembled a comfortable hotel. 3 weeks, Miles said. Renee and I will check on the house. You'll come home rested. I looked at the photographs. I thought about the dizziness, which had frightened me more than I admitted. I thought about Barb's question from 3 weeks earlier. Whose future is he planning? And then I told myself perhaps I had been unfair. Perhaps my son was simply frightened. Nothing changes with my accounts while I'm gone, I said. Of course not. 3 weeks only. He squeezed my hand. 3 weeks, Mum, I promise. He came for me on a Monday morning, alone. Renee did not come. He loaded 1 bag into the truck. We drove through the South End, across the Macdonald Bridge into Dartmouth, and then further, past the waterfront, past the blocks I recognized, into a residential area I did not. He turned down a cracked asphalt driveway. The sign at the end of it read, Mapleton Care Home. The brick was stained dark beneath the eaves. 1 upper window had been covered with plywood and a piece of blue tarp fraying at the corner. Weeds pushed through the painted lines of the parking lot. This isn't the place in the brochure, I said. Same organization, different location. Miles, my voice was steady. Turn around and take me home. He parked the truck. A staff member appeared at the door with a wheelchair. I told her I could walk. She smiled the way people do when they've heard it many times. Inside, floor cleaner and overcooked vegetables. Carpet worn to bare backing near the reception desk. A television playing too loudly in the corner. 2 residents sitting by the window, not speaking, simply sitting. Miles signed papers at the desk. I reached toward them. He covered 1 page with his hand. The receptionist will give you copies, he said. A nurse took my blood pressure. Someone attached a paper identification bracelet to my wrist. I hated it the moment it touched my skin. Miles checked his watch. I have to get back, site meeting. You just brought me here. He kissed my forehead. I'll call you tomorrow. I watched him walk out through the front doors and get into his truck without looking back. When I asked the receptionist what the paperwork said about the duration of my stay, she turned her clipboard slightly away from me and said, 3 weeks. That's what your son told us when he enrolled you. I took out my phone. No signal. I tried again. Nothing. My service had been active that morning. At the front desk telephone, I called Miles. No answer. Voicemail. Again. An automated voice told me the number was not currently receiving calls. I sat in a chair near the window beside the two residents who were simply sitting, and I understood, completely and without any remaining uncertainty, what my son had done. Kim Yoon found me the next morning in the activities room, sitting in front of an old computer that took 7 minutes to connect to the internet. She was the social worker at Mapleton. Perhaps 40, dark hair pulled back, tired eyes that paid attention. When the bank page finally loaded, my checking account showed a balance of $6,218. 3 weeks earlier, it had held just over $44,000. Mrs. Thornton, Kim said quietly, you don't look well. My son enrolled me here without my full knowledge or consent, I said. And approximately $38,000 has been transferred out of my account without my authorization. She pulled up a chair. She listened to everything I told her without interrupting. When I finished, she asked 3 questions. Whether any court had declared me legally incapable, whether any physicians had found me unable to manage my own affairs, and whether I had someone I trusted outside this building. I had not, and yes. Barb Schilling, I said. I had known her phone number for 18 years. Kim handed me the office telephone. Barb answered on the second ring. Glenda, your lights have been off for 2 nights. Where are you? I told her. When I finished, she was quiet for 4 seconds, which for Barb was a very long silence. Then she said, tell me what you need. I told her about the workshop. Stuart's workshop at the back of the garage, the gray metal lockbox on the top shelf above the workbench. He had told me more than once, in that quiet way of his, it holds what matters if things go sideways. I had never taken him seriously, because things had never gone sideways. What's the combination? Barb asked. I told her to try our anniversary, then his mother's birth year. She called back 35 minutes later. Second one worked, she said. Papers rustled through the line. There's a notebook, some documents, and a business card. Whose? She read it aloud. Edgar Novak, Estate and Trust Solicitor, Halifax, Ness. I had met Edgar Novak once, 8 years ago, at dinner with Stuart. He had been quietly spoken and ordered the salmon. Stuart had respected him the way he respected very few people, completely and without qualification. There's a note from Stuart, Barb said. Her voice had changed. In his handwriting. Read it to me. A pause then. Glenda, if you're reading this, you needed to. Call Edgar. Everything is in order, don't worry. S. I sat back in Kim's office chair and held the phone receiver against my chest for a moment before I could speak again. Don't worry. Edgar Novak arrived at Mapleton the following morning at 9 o'clock, precisely. He was older than I remembered. Silver at his temples, new reading glasses, but he moved with the same deliberate, unhurried manner that Stuart had always admired. He shook my hand. Mrs. Thornton, I'm glad you called. Kim stayed in the room at my request. I had decided I would not have another important conversation without a witness. Edgar placed a leather folder on the conference room table. Inside, behind a blue divider, the Thornton Family Trust. Established 2016. I had been present at the signing. I had sat at my own kitchen table on a Saturday afternoon and signed where Stuart pointed while Miles watched a hockey game in the next room. I had not asked enough questions. The trust holds 2 principal assets, Edgar said. Your property in the South End and an investment portfolio Stuart built over 37 years. I stared at him. How large a portfolio? He named a figure. I had known Stuart was careful. I had not understood how careful or for how long. He had been being careful on my behalf. Miles was named as remainder beneficiary, Edgar continued. After your death, a substantial portion of what remains was intended for him. Was intended? There is a protective clause, Section 10. Miles had contacted a realtor about the property 3 days before he drove me to Dartmouth. Edgar had confirmed this through the Nova Scotia Land Registry. An inquiry had been filed in Miles's name, presenting the power of attorney as authorizing a sale or equity arrangement. The realtor had put the matter on hold after the title search revealed the trust. The power of attorney, whatever page 4 had contained, granted no authority over trust-held real estate. He didn't understand what he was working against, I said. He knew the trust existed. He received a summary after Stuart died. He did not read the full terms. He assumed the power of attorney would override the trust structure. It did not. What is Section 10? Edgar read it to me, without drama, without editorial, the way Stuart would have read it. The way you read something that has been written to be precise. A remainder beneficiary's rights under the trust could be suspended and redirected if that beneficiary was found to have financially exploited, coerced, intentionally isolated, or abandoned the primary beneficiary for financial gain. Stuart had insisted on the clause. He told Edgar about a client, years ago, an elderly woman whose adult children had removed her from her home under the pretext of needing care. They had expected an inheritance. The F spent her last years in a facility she never would have chosen while the children managed her property. Stuart had never recovered from watching it. He had made certain that no version of it could happen to me. I thought about him standing at his workbench, measuring twice, the lockbox on the top shelf. Don't worry. He wrote this for me, I said. He wrote it for whichever of you survived. Leaving Mapleton took less than an hour. Kim presented the administrator with documentation. No court order, no medical finding, no legal basis for detention. There had never been. I removed my paper identification bracelet at the front desk and set it on the counter. Outside, Barb was waiting beside her car with 2 Tim Hortons cups and an expression that said she had been ready to argue with someone and was mildly disappointed she hadn't needed to. Miles's truck turned into the parking lot as I walked out. He came toward me quickly, still managing to look polished. The good watch back on his wrist, the company jacket, as if the man who had begged me for help at a diner on the phone was someone else entirely. Mum, the bank called me this morning. What's happening? I revoked the power of attorney. He stopped. You can't do that. I did. Edgar filed the notices this morning. He looked at Edgar, who had stepped out behind me. Something crossed his face, recognition, then calculation. You had no right to involve him, Miles said. She had every right, Edgar said. Miles, I said his name the way I had when he was 11 and lying to me about a broken window. He stopped moving. You enrolled me in a long-term care facility under false paperwork, I said. You transferred $38,000 from my account to your business. You attempted to access my property without legal authority. You canceled my phone service. You told my neighbor you were handling my estate. He opened his mouth. While I was alive, I said. He closed it again. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said what I had been waiting for him to say. I had a plan. I was going to fix everything before you found out. The company just needed a few months. How many months were you going to leave me in there? He looked at the ground. A few. Barb made a sound behind me. You told me 3 weeks, I said. You shook my hand and promised. I know. His voice had gone quiet. I thought once the receivables came in, I could replace the money. I'd move you somewhere better. I was going to explain. You were waiting for the ending to excuse the middle. He didn't answer. That was enough. Edgar will contact you formally, I said. I suggest you speak to your own solicitor. I got into Barb's car. Miles came to my window. Mum, please, if the company goes under everything. Then it goes under, I said. What I nearly lost cannot be recovered by a business. I raised the window. Barb drove. The formal meeting took place at Edgar's office on the Halifax waterfront 6 days later. Miles came with his own solicitor, a measured man named Calvin Whitaker, who had clearly already read the trust and understood the severity. Renee did not come. Edgar presented the documentation in sequence. Bank records. The address change Miles had made to redirect my statements to his office, the land registry inquiry, and finally the Mapleton admission papers with their description of me as cognitively declining and unable to manage my own financial affairs, a description Miles had signed his name beneath. He had listed a forgotten book club date, reading glasses left on my own head. He had built a case from ordinary moments and put it on paper. I looked at it for a long time. You knew that wasn't true when you signed it, I said. Miles looked at his hands. He did not deny it. Calvin Whitaker read Section 10 of the Thornton Family Trust twice. Then he asked his client, very quietly, whether he had known this provision existed. Miles said no. Edgar said he had been informed of his remainder interest and advised it was subject to the full trust terms. I thought that meant administrative matters, Miles said. Taxes. No, said Edgar. Miles's remainder interest, a figure that represented Stuart's lifetime of careful work, was suspended pending review of the documented conduct. Miles looked at the table. Then he looked at me. Is that your decision? He asked. The clause is not mine to override by sentiment, I said. But what happens next depends on you, not on how I feel this morning. I moved into a 2-bedroom flat in Halifax's North End 3 weeks later. Bright kitchen, afternoon light through a front window, 10 minutes walk from the public library where I had spent most of my working life. Barb helped me move in. We ate Lebanese takeout from Gottingen Street, sitting on the floor because the dining table hadn't arrived. She raised a can of ginger ale. To finding the lockbox. To Stuart, I said. She nodded. Same thing. Thornton Grounds and Properties closed that autumn. Miles sold the equipment, settled what debts he could, and found work as a project manager with a commercial construction firm in Bedford. The company truck was gone by October. He and Renee sold their house and moved into a rental in Sackville. He repaid the transferred funds over 8 months, steadily, without being asked twice. That mattered to me more than the money itself. He called in November. His voice was different. The salesmanship was gone, something quieter underneath. I'm sorry, he said, not because I got caught, because of what I did. I believed him, partially carefully, with both eyes open. We had coffee in Dartmouth in December. His suggestion, his choosing, I noticed, he had chosen, the side of the bridge he had driven me across without my consent, and I thought that small act of acknowledgement said more than he probably knew. He brought a box of photographs from the house. Family albums, loose prints, Stuart at 35 in the back garden, Miles at 9 with a fish he'd caught at a lake in Cape Breton, my wedding photograph. I went through them without speaking for a long time. Dad would be ashamed of me, he said eventually. He would, I said. He would also ask what you're doing now. Miles looked at his coffee. Taking direction. Paying people back. Not pretending I'm something I'm not. Then that's what your father would say first. We sat quietly. The diner window was fogged from the cold outside. Mum, he said finally, do you think you'll ever trust me again? I had spent several months finding an honest answer to that question. Trust comes back through what you do, I said. Not through what you ask for. Bring me a receipt, not a promise. He nodded. He didn't argue. The old Miles would have found another door. What I had learned, slowly, and not without pain, was that loving someone and granting them financial access are two separate decisions, and that conflating them had nearly cost me everything. Stuart had understood that before I did. He had built a door I could always walk through, secured it against anyone who might try to hold it shut, and left me the combination in a lockbox on a workshop shelf. The important detail was not the legal clause alone. The important detail was that I had picked up Kim's office telephone, asked Barb to find the lockbox, and read every word on every page before I signed a single thing. Stuart had left me the tools, but I had been the one who used them. That was always going to be mine,